Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for having me. My name is Chad Crittenden, and I am a teacher. That's not what brought me here today. I've actually been a consultant in the 3D printing industry for several years, but before that I was a teacher, and I'll probably be returning to teaching this coming year. But neither my consulting in 3D printing nor my teaching is what ultimately brought me here today. The main reason that I'm here today, the path that brought me here, stems from the fact that I was on a television show in the United States. I was on the TV show Survivor. Has anybody seen Survivor? Raise your hand if you know about the show Survivor. Oh, I'm so glad. I was talking with some others before, and I thought, I better make sure that people have seen Survivor here before I start talking about it, because, you know, I need to reference it. So I was on season 9 of Survivor, a season called Islands of Fire. And the Islands of Fire refer to the islands of Vanuatu. Vanuatu is an island nation between Fiji and Australia in the South Pacific. And we were brought out there on a small outrigger canoe and introduced to the native peoples. But before I go into Survivor and my experiences there and how that relates, you're probably wondering how that relates to 3D printing and body symmetry. What I'm going to talk about is the printing of fairings. I'll bring you in on a little bit of reference in the form of a video. So let me show this short video of challenges of Survivor. Okay, so those were some scenes of Survivor, and I'm doing a quick change here to show you that what you didn't see, whoops, that's my bad. What you did not see there on that tape, and if the cameraman could pan back a little bit, I'll show you that what you did not see is this crazy prosthetic foot. Now, some of you may have seen in the program the photo there, and you weren't supposed to see that. And the reason that I did this little quick change was to sort of demonstrate what I did on the TV show Survivor. So I went on to Survivor with the zippy pants on, and I just did that little quick change here where I unzipped the pant legs. They're convertible. I went on with the full pant legs. I don't have a limp. I walk perfectly good, and I'm able to do all the athletics like the others were. And I wanted to see what their reactions would be after finding out that I'm an amputee, that I'm actually disabled. I wanted to go and prove myself as somebody who was able-bodied, as it were, somebody who could do all the same things that the rest of those tribe members were able to do. And then after I was able to prove myself, then reveal, take off the pant legs, and see if they would treat me differently before or after. Would they treat me as somebody who was just like them, who they were able to see doing these athletic sort of endeavors, or would they revert back to their preconceived notions of what somebody with a disability is capable of? So it was kind of a social experiment in a way to see what they would do, how they would act, you know, if they would treat me the same. So it was interesting, and I'm going to go into how that played out. And then after my experience in Survivor and how I came to work in the 3D printed industry as a consultant, and how the 3D printing fairing, 3D printed fairing, restores the body shape. And that'll be the technology aspect of it. But for now, let me just tell a little bit about my story, how I sort of came to be here today. It was way before Survivor, way before anything having to do with this, that I was able-bodied. I was born perfectly able-bodied with both feet. very athletic as a kid. My favorite sport was soccer, or football as I would prefer it be called. Soccer was my big love. I was into every sort of sport that you could think of as a kid, very active. I played soccer all the way through, or football, all the way through high school and into college. I went to University of California at Davis. That's where I grew up, was California, in the west coast of the US. Continued playing soccer through my adult life. I graduated from Davis International Relations and became a teacher. I was in an over 30 league, a men's league, after my 8th year of teaching. I was still playing soccer, and I was an avid mountain biker and triathlete. I do Xterra triathlons as well. And after a vacation with my friend Alan, I noticed something on the bottom of my foot. Actually, Alan did. We were on a very grueling mountain bike ride. We raced from time to time, weren't very serious about it. But we got back from this mountain bike ride. I took off my bike cleats and peeled off my socks. I kicked my feet up onto the picnic table there. And Alan looks over and he goes, "Dude, what is that on the bottom of your foot?" And on the bottom of my foot was a bump. And I didn't know what it was. I knew that there was just this little growth there. I thought it was a cyst. And I said, "I don't know, it's a cyst or something. I've had cysts come and go on my wrist before, a little one on my head I had removed. No big deal." And he goes, "Dude, that could be a tumor. You should get it checked out." Now, Alan didn't go to college. I did. He stayed in my hometown of Half Moon Bay, and we were still very good friends. But I was the educated one, so I would tell him. I said to him, I talked down on which I shouldn't, and I said, "Alan, what do you mean a tumor? That's cancer. First of all, you don't get cancer on the bottom of your foot. You get cancer like, you can get in your liver, your lungs, your brain, or melanoma of the skin." As if I know anything about cancer at all. I'm not a doctor. I went to school for international relations, not my MD. So I'm talking to him as if I know anything about it. And he goes, "Whatever, man, you should get it checked out." So I did. I had it checked out. It was no big deal. The doctor said, "If this thing grows, come back." And sure enough, it did grow. And my 8th year of teaching, I was about ready to start the new season of our men's over 30 league soccer. We had won our first division, so we moved to Premier Division, and I was really looking to up my training and get, in shape. And this thing on my foot was bothering me. It wasn't painful, but it bugged me when I put my cleats on. So cleats, they fit tighter, they're a little bit smaller, and so they bothered me when I put my foot in there. So I went to the doctors again and said, "Can you remove this growth?" And they tried to dissuade me, saying that there's lots of fascia and tendons down there, and if we remove it, then it's kind of complicated. But on my insistence, I said, "Take it out. This is my choice, so remove it." Okay. I got a substitute teacher for that Friday. They had the surgery. I got another substitute teacher on the Monday just so I'd have an extra day. I was watching daytime television, feeling a little guilty that I wasn't at work at school. And I got a phone call from my doctor. And he said that they removed this growth, and it turned out to be a cancerous tumor. Sure enough, like Alan had said. And the first thing I thought of was, Alan, oh my God, how did he know? Like he's a clairvoyant or something. But it was quickly replaced by all these feelings of dread and wondering what I'm going to do with this cancer diagnosis. Our daughter, I was married, I am married, our daughter was 1 year old at the time, so there was kind of this biological tug inside me about living and wanting to get through this. So I was given two choices. One was to remove the margins around where the tumor was. It would give me a partial foot. That means a lot of the foot would be taken out. It would leave me with a permanent limp, and I wouldn't be able to run again, the doctor said. Now, of course, like I said, I'd done triathlon for years, and soccer was football was something that I was very much in love with. So the idea of not being able to run was something that was incomprehensible to me. So I went home. The first thing I did was Google synovial sarcoma. The first thing I saw was a graph. On one axis was time, the other was deaths, and it was like straight up. And I was like, Apple, quit, get out of there. I don't want to see this. I did not, it was a mortality rate graph, and I was trying to interpret it, and I realized what I was looking at was how many deaths in just the near term. And within 18 months, most people die from this. It starts to metastasize to the lungs immediately. I was in a dangerous situation. I'd had a CT scan of my lungs. There was a nodule there. They didn't know what to make of it. They said, in 3 months, if we find that it's grown, then you're in trouble. If it hasn't, then you're okay. So just come back in 3 months and we'll tell you that. I'm like, what? This is my life, right? So it was a tough time. But I had to decide what I was going to do with the surgery. And that was made pretty easy by looking on the internet and finding how amazing people all over the world were doing with prostheses, with technologically advanced prostheses like I'm wearing now. They were running, they were doing the Paralympic Games, they were playing soccer, snowboarding, all the things I love to do. And I really didn't feel any attachment to my foot at all if it wasn't going to serve me, if it wasn't going to do what it was supposed to do, and that's all the things I just named. So I said, let's go ahead and have the surgery. So I had the surgery, and it was not easy, but I was able to get through it and get back to the things that I enjoyed, namely doing triathlon. So after about 7 months being off, I had already talked to my classroom. I had third grade kids. I talked to my third graders and told them that I was going to be gone for a while, that I was going to get surgery, I had cancer. And I tried to explain it in very kid-like terms to them. I said that there was something wrong with my foot, I have cancer, and we need to remove the foot so that it doesn't make the rest of my body sick. That was kind of the kid explanation for it. I don't know if they actually got it or not, but that's all I could tell them. But I returned to my classroom after recovering, and 9 months after the surgery, I did a sprint distance triathlon, just to kind of prove to myself that I could get back into it. I went to my prosthetist, got the extreme high-level foot I could run on. I didn't run the whole race. Then I did the swim. It starts off with swim, then bike, then run. For the swim portion, I had this foot that you can unlock it and kind of put it into prone position for swimming. It's awesome. It has webbed feet, very fast, and it's really buoyant too, so it's floaty, it's hollow, literally a hollow leg. So I'm able to go on top of the water just super fast. And my triathlete friends are like, dude, that's an advantage, man. I'm like, no, I'm disabled. And I'm like getting great times. So it was awesome. Then the run, like I said, the bike was easy enough with this. The run, I didn't run the whole race. I just wanted to finish it. I wasn't quite ready to complete the run. It was only 9 months after the surgery. So I was satisfied then just to finish the race. And I really proved to myself that I could sort of just get back on the horse, so to speak. Getting bucked off, just get right back on and get back into the things that I loved. And accomplishing that just really shot me forward as far as like feeling like, I can get back into this and I can do these things. So after returning back to work, the kids had lots of questions, all my little third graders. So I sat down with them and showed them all the components and how this works. And this is a post and titanium and carbon fiber. And this is a one-way expulsion valve and how the sleeve fits on there and it's held on by suction. And they were very fascinated by it. And there was a couple of little boys in the class that were extremely inquisitive. And they would ask stuff. And I remember the first day, this one kid who's really rambunctious. And he's always getting up out of his seat and moving around like, in inappropriate times when he's not supposed to. And he goes, Mr. C, what's that button? I was like, you know what? This is a laser. If you get up out of your seat, I could across, and you got to sit down or else, you're in danger. So I was letting them know, like, who was boss there. But so they would ask all kinds of things, and kids on the playground were very inquisitive too. But, they would only see me for very short periods of time when I was out there. And finally, when I got this funny story about being a teacher, and then I'll move on. But this last thing I want to just tell you about is when I was finally emerging out of the classroom to the playground. So I would do yard duty. Every teacher had to. But when I came back from my surgery, all the rest of the teachers were cool with it, and they were taking over my duties because I wasn't walking a lot. I was on a crutch, and then I finally went to a cane. And by the time I was done with that and I was completely walking normally, I told the rest of my colleagues, my coworkers, look, I'll take back my yard duty. And they were, okay. So it was springtime. Actually, it was about this time of year, several years back. So about 10 years ago. And I would be wearing shorts, very similarly dressed as I am now as a teacher. And I finally went out onto the playground where all the other kids were, and they could see this. And I had heard rumors of like Terminator foot, Transformer, like pirate leg, Robot Man, all this stuff. And so I knew that they were gonna be asking questions. So I go out there with my little clipboard, I'm all official. And I noticed all these kids around me, and pretty soon it's like these grommets following me around like I was a tour guide or something, like the semicircle of kids. And they were asking normal questions about how it works. And one of the questions invariably that they would ask is, and the little kids, these were the like kindergarten first graders, they would stand 10 feet away or something, they'd say, Mr. C, where's your foot? And, so I would explain to them, all right, well, something happened, and we had to remove the foot so it didn't make the rest of my body sick, that same sort of kid explanation. They're like, no, where's your foot? Like they want to know physically, where did it go? What did you do with the foot? You removed it, where did it go? Like they have this, cognitively, they want to complete this picture of foot and other foot, so where did it go? So I'm not gonna explain it to them. I'd be like, hey guys, look, there's a horse. And they'd be like, run the other way, They're easily distracted at that age, so. But that couldn't last forever, so I finally had to come up with a different story. And so one day I figured something out, and it was perfect. This one, same thing, I went on the playground, this kid came up, he was missing 2 front teeth. And he's like, Mr. C, where's your foot? And I was like, where's your teeth, dude? He's like, touche. No, he didn't say that. His vocabulary wasn't quite advanced to say that. But I said, where's your teeth? And he said he lost them. And I said, well, what happened? And he said, they came loose. And I said, yeah, well, they fell out. And I said, well, what'd you do with your teeth? He said, put them on my pillow. And cool, did Tooth Fairy come? He goes, yeah. How much did you get? He said, I got a golden dollar. They have these new golden dollars in the States for, the US coinage. And I said, that's cool. You got a golden dollar for each? Yeah. And I said, well, same sort of thing happened with me. My foot came loose. So it was kind of wiggly, and it was finally just coming looser and looser. And I said, and it fell off. And I said, same thing. I put it on my pillow. Put it in there. So it's kind of hard to fall asleep. It's a little bulky. So I finally did manage to fall asleep, and the next day I woke up, and there was a huge stack of cash, like this big mountain of money. They're like, oh my God, he's rich, Mr. C. So I'm imagining they're going, like there's a corresponding ferry for each body part that you lose, like it's a corresponding amount of money that you get out of it. So like, former student of mine is like, yeah, right, Mr. C. He's like a 5th grader. He was listening to the story. He's like, there's a foot fairy, Mr. C? I'm like, yeah, whatever. So, and it worked out, though. It was a very good transition for me as a new amputee, a new disabled person, someone who had never come to terms with, not yet, it's so recent, with being someone who is now a disabled person. So being around kids was just a great transition for me to, come to terms. And they knew me as Mr. C before I lost my foot, and now I was the same person. And there was kind of this unconditional love going on, sort of this non-judgmental, view of things that kids would have. So it was just perfect for making me feel like, I could just do whatever. So that kind of led to Survivor in a way, because I was feeling okay about it. Now, the way that came about was after I finished the triathlon, the next school year was starting the new season of Survivor, and my wife and I were big Survivor fans, and season 8 was on, and it was All-Stars. That was the first All-Star season, and those of you that have watched Survivor know that it was the first one. It was a big deal. It was all the best players from previous seasons, the good, the bad, and the ugly, just all coming together, so it was a big season. And my wife and I sit down to watch it, and it all lined up. I was kind of sitting there, I put my feet up, and the guy comes on screen and says, if you'd like, just the narrator says, if you'd like to be the next contestant on Survivor, send in your, audition tape, etc. And it lined up. There's the leg, there's the TV. I was like, that's what's gonna get me on Survivor. I knew it. I had it figured out. I thought, if I audition, they've never seen this, I'm doing all this stuff now. I just had it figured out. I just saw that it was almost like a vision I saw happening. So I made my tape, it was a tape back then, okay? It was long enough ago. It wasn't digital. I wasn't able to just send it in. I had to fill out an application and send it in, and sure enough, I made it onto the show. So I'm gonna spare you, even though it's actually pretty cool and interesting. That's not the theme of this event, is to talk about Survivor. So I'll skip through the actual show itself, and suffice to say that it was absolutely amazing, and it was life-changing. It was not easy. It was extremely difficult. If you've ever seen the show, it kind of seems like, oh, they give them stuff, or they, you know, after the cameras are off, they might do this, but the cameras are never off, and you suffer, and you suffer, and you're freezing, and you can't sleep, and you don't eat, and you're dehydrated, and all the people are annoying, you know? So it's just like the most extreme case you see on TV, so it was tough. I did not win the $1 million either, so in case you were wondering, no, I'm not a multimillionaire like some others that have been up here, but I made it pretty far, and they do give you the amount, the further you get, the more you make. So that was kind of cool. I made it to the second one on the jury, so it was more than halfway, and it was really cool to be part of the jury and see how the whole process worked. But my friend Chris ended up winning the game. It was actually, this season was men versus women, and when the two tribes merged, there were 3 men left, and there were 6 women. So this guy Sarge was voted off. I was voted off next just because there was a woman versus men alliance. So I was voted off just by virtue of being a man and nothing else. It was just purely by gender. Then there was one guy left, Chris, and he manipulated the women to vote each other off, and he snaked through and won the game. So that's who won, was Chris Doherty. Very good friend of mine. I still visit him, and he's the millionaire from Ohio. So, yeah. So after the show ended, it was interesting how I was sort of a de facto spokesperson for those with disabilities. I was now representing, as it were, all people, not just amputees, but people with disabilities in general. Like, okay, you can do it. And I felt very privileged to kind of be in this role to show what people with disabilities could do. And now I'm going to show you the second part of this video. And what this is, it's the same video you saw before. A little bit of extra, but now it's unedited. The first one was edited. It didn't show me from the waist down. But this is what they saw on TV, and this is what the rest of my tribe mates were seeing me do. This is fully just from the show. And let's see here. Let's get it going. So I'm going to stop right there. That was the full Monty, as it were. And the reason I show that is it's kind of to do a social experiment, the same sort of thing as I did when I was on the show as I came out here. Now, some of you probably read the flyer already and knew that I had the fake leg. But those that didn't probably didn't know that I did. And so I kind of wanted to show what the other tribe mates and the rest of the viewers were seeing and do that same social experiment. And it was interesting how it played out. Now, I didn't get into this, but when I revealed the leg, I wanted to see if they would indeed treat me the same or if they would treat me differently. And for the most part, first of all, I didn't anticipate one thing, and that is there's cameras on them. So when they do say encouraging things, oh, wow, I'm surprised, I'm impressed, that's inspirational, that's really cool, I don't know if they're really thinking that or if they're saying it because there's a camera there and mom's watching on the other end, right? If they say, oh, great, the disabled guy, you know, that's pretty callous, that doesn't look good. So I had to just take what their reactions were with a grain of salt and just sort of say, okay, I'm not sure if this is genuine or not. But the way to tell is to get to know these people individually, and the only way to get to know them is by hanging out with them, and there's nothing else I could do. They were my tribe. So after a week or so, I felt like these were genuine reactions, and they really had accepted me as somebody that was part of their tribe, as somebody that could do the same things that they were able to do, and I was on a level playing field with the rest of them. But there was one exception. There was one guy named John Kenny, and he actually reverted back to this idea of preconceived notions. And he tried to get me voted off based on the disability, not based on what he saw me doing, but based on what he thought that I could do. So he went back to some old judgments that he had about those with disabilities. And he went to the others and said, let's get Chad voted off. He's obviously the weakest link here. And in true Survivor fashion, they were like, oh, yeah. And they did an end around to me, and they're like, he wants to get you voted off, man. And we did all the manipulation and all the getting into these tribal groups, and which are alliances, right? And so we had a very interesting time of it. We eventually voted his butt off of there because of that, so he was out of there. But it was interesting how that played itself out. And for the most part, I was treated the same, and I was very glad not to have been voted off because of my disability. It was nothing to do with it, and I performed as well or better than others. So now you may have noticed that I walked out here and things look a little different. This, what I'm wearing now, is going to lead into the technology aspect of my talk, and that is 3D printing. What I'm wearing here is called a fairing, and this is a 3D printed cover that fits over onto my prosthetic post. And I'll do a little modeling for you, like a little one of these. No, if there was a runway, I'd go all the way out in there and whatever. So what it is a representation of my non-existent lower limb, my calf and my shin and the musculature, but not trying to recreate it with skin tone, skin, the color of the skin or hair even, like some cosmetic covers try to do with prosthetics. What this is created is about, and I'm going to go into more detail about it, is taking a scan using various ways of scanning, body scanning, creating a 3D image using computer-assisted design, working in CAD to take a scan of this leg, reverse image, so it's the exact representation of the opposite leg, and then create in computer-assisted design what's called a fairing, and that is a cover that can bolt onto that post that you saw. And it's absolutely amazing how it bolts on and recreates the shape without attaching and looking kind of grotesque the way that the traditional covers look. It's something that's cool looking, created from an industrial designer, artistic, and something that can be almost like an accessory, but it recreates the shape and it recreates the symmetry in the human body. And that's something that I was not aware that had any bearing on me whatsoever until I used them, and then I started to sort of feel a difference. So I'm gonna talk a little bit about that. So everybody here, obviously, by now has heard of 3D printing. It's an industry that is up and coming, and I had really very little knowledge about it 3 years ago when I started with what was the former name was Bespoke Innovations. I started with a small company called Bespoke Innovations. They asked me to do some beta testing of these things called fairings. Scott Summit started Bespoke Innovations, and I put that up there after 3D Systems. He started Bespoke Innovations to create fairings, solely to create fairings. He's a co-founder. He started it with another man who's an orthopedic surgeon, Dr. Ken Trauner. They started this company, and he asked me to come on board to try these things out. So when I first tried one out, it was pretty amazing. It wasn't anything that I thought was anything other than this novel thing that kind of looked cool. But it went several layers further after that, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that. This is, the first slide here you see is my friend Deborah. And this is the sort of iconic photo of Bespoke Innovations. They were recently, well, a year and a half ago, more like 2 years ago, acquired by 3D Systems. 3D Systems is the largest manufacturer of 3D printers in the world. They actually invented the 3D printer, and they're pretty huge. So they went about acquiring many, many companies that have to do with what they do, and 3D Systems came and acquired Bespoke Innovations like a year and a half ago. So Deborah here this is one of the iconic photos that's in lots of Bespoke Innovations and 3D Systems stuff. But here's how sort of the fairing idea started. This is a modern prosthetic. This is very similar to what my leg looks like. It has a what's called a socket on the top. The middle part is a post or pylon, and the bottom is the foot. Inside that foot shell is the prosthetic foot. And in my case, it's this really cool carbon fiber. It's almost like a leaf spring. Like it has energy return. There's no moving parts in mine. There are in others. But that foot shell is strange, and it's kind of grotesque, like I say, and there's something creepy about those things. They try to mimic the color of the human skin, and they even have toenails in there, and then like this little vein on the top. It's like, get it away, you know? You don't want to see these things. And that's exactly the point, is that no one wants to look at this gross thing. It really is kind of freaky and creepy. So what this is that this leg is kind of a combination of this weird, creepy mannequin on the left, which you know, it's like the stuff of nightmares, right? That guy, right? So, and then a combination of that and this very practical looking, landing gear. There's that post, it looks very similar to that, which serves a purely practical purpose. There's nothing about that landing gear that's trying to look nice. It's just purely there to land the plane, and it's a technological marvel, but it's absolutely not nice to look at. So what Scott Summit came up with was this idea of combining three concepts to come up with the fairing, and that is beauty. He has a background in not only art, but industrial design. He'd worked with Palm Pilot back in the day, and Apple, and several other companies as an industrial designer to create these beautiful cases and other sort of aesthetically pleasing products. Combining beauty with the human needs, and that's the practical, like that landing gear, being able to actually still walk and use this for what it was intended for. Along with technology, using technology to help those along. The technology in this case is computer-assisted design and 3D printing to create the fairing. So his idea was this cover, a cover that would cover up this sort of the landing gear sort of stuff, the ugly stuff, and use beautiful lines like you see in this sports car, and have something that was kind of, appealing, visually appealing, aesthetically appealing. And instead of showing the car like this, this is underneath. You don't just drive this around. You could just drive this around. It's practical if it had seats. But that's kind of what's underneath. And there's no reason to just walk around with that. Why not have a cover that serves several purposes? Uses sculpture. It's like industrial design, and what he does is really a form of sculpture in creating these things. And 3D printing has come up with so many amazing products since then. Using sculpture and industrial design. And so this is a CAD file he's working on, taking some of the geometry, some of the physical scanning parameters from a sound side leg, reversing it, and creating a fairing using computer-assisted design, like I said. Now, the word fairing comes from a motorcycle fairing. Or it's not just for motorcycles, but that's what sort of made that word fairing more of a popular name. And the fairing in the motorcycle serves two purposes, of course. That's for aerodynamics, and it's also to cover up all these, unsightly motorcycle parts, the engine and all these other things that don't look as nice as that beautifully sculpted fairing, just like the outside of that Porsche that you saw before. So the very first try that Scott had at making 3D printed legs, he tried for a whole leg. This wasn't even fairings necessarily. This is before Bespoke Innovations. And he was making a 3D printed leg, the entire leg. This is my friend John Siciliano. He is an above-the-knee amputee. So amputees are pretty much classified by below the knee or above the knee. I have my knee. Mine is below the knee. It's a very good thing to have the knee. It's very difficult to replicate the human knee. There's lots of amazing mechanical knees, but they don't do the same thing. You can replicate the foot. I've been able to do everything that I did before and then some with my fake foot. But the knee is a different thing entirely. But what Scott did is he tried to create an entire 3D printed leg, and he did. And it's just cool. This thing is badass. It just looks awesome. He covered this one, I'm pointing down there. He covered this one in a saddle leather, like a cowboy saddle leather. It's just very custom. But the thing is, and here's another one in black leather, that knee is a proof of concept. It was 3D printed. It was chromed, as we call it. You sent this, it's a the process is such. The computer-assisted design file is sent to a 3D printer. The 3D printer is called a selective laser sintering printer, SLS machine. And the particular material that they use is a polyamide nylon. So this is printed out in like a very fancy industrial-grade nylon plastic. And the part that looks metal there is actually not metal. This is not metal in the back either, but it's coated in a nickel coating. Now, it's not painted or coated on, but it's dipped, and the nickel infuses to the polyamide nylon at the molecular level. It's not, so it will never chip off. It's actually part of the nylon itself. And that's how this knee looks here. It looks metal, but it's very light. It's just a coating, which like I said, the nickel's infused on. Amazing concept, but the knee doesn't hold his weight. It's not weight-bearing. It can't function. It moves, but he can't walk with it, and it doesn't, like I say, bear weight. So this was just something that was a proof of concept, like I said, but not necessarily anything practical. Once he realized that making a truly functional prosthetic knee through 3D printing was like way into the future and we were not technologically ready for that yet, he realized that fairings were the way to go. And fairings would attach onto the existing prosthetic post, like I explained, and you would still recreate the shape, have something that's aesthetically pleasing, kind of an amazing work of art, really, and give an amputee their shape back and something they can be proud of. So this is the CAD file in blue. This is a patient's leg. You can see that's not their real leg, that's a prosthetic socket. And then here's the post where it attaches onto, and that's just the CAD file, but then the finished product is over top, overlaid. There's more of a close-up of what the pattern looks like. Any patient, any candidate can get whatever pattern, way, shape, or form that they want. They could get, like this is, the one that I have is a JPEG of just a little bit of a tattoo. Anything embossed or debossed, anything that they want that exists as a file, as a JPEG or any other sort of computer file, they can have it put into a fairing. Now this guy had a chrome and black one made. He ironically lost his leg on a motorcycle accident, but he wanted to get back on. He got his fairing that matched his Harley perfectly. I mean, it's really difficult to see where his leg ends and where the motorcycle begins. It's kind of like all together into one. He really loved that idea. So it's pretty cool, and it's the exact shape of his calf as well. Now here's me right after Survivor. I had not a clue of what a fairing was. And so that's my leg that I showed you just a little while ago, what it looked like. It's the same one, same setup. Once I got a fairing, it changed the shape of things. Now, when I first got this fairing, I thought, okay, this is cool. It's a novel idea. I'll test this out. It looks neat, you know, I feel pretty cool about wearing it, whatever. It was when I took it off after like 2 weeks, that's when I really noticed how it affected me. Because I took it off and I wanted it back on. Because subconsciously, my shape had been restored with the fairing on. That shape. Now that's the same fairing. And that photo here, this photo really captures what the shape, the symmetry is all about. Because that's my non-existent calf shape. And subconsciously, I had my symmetry back. And the human brain and mind is always trying to find that symmetry, especially with your own body. And if you look down and you have that symmetry back, there's something complete. And I didn't realize that. I'd been on TV, I'd done the whole circuit, I'd been doing some speaking here and there, I'd done some ads and things like that. And I was comfortable with who I was as an amputee, but once I had that shape back, I didn't realize that when it was taken away, I needed that back. And I felt really almost insecure without that fairing on. So it's a really interesting psychological phenomenon that occurs when an amputee gets their shape back. So it's just awesome. And incidentally, this color just happened to be in this leather. We weren't trying to go for the color of the skin here. It just happened to be the exact same, almost the exact same skin tone. But we put that metal badge on there, so it wasn't attempting to kind of look like an exact leg. That's exactly what Scott did not want with the whole idea of creating a fairing. It's not supposed to look like the human leg. It's the shape, but it's supposed to look amazingly visually appealing, almost like a work of art, like an accessory. So the next thing we did was we scanned my left leg with my shin guard on for soccer. I had my shin guard, we scanned that. He did a reverse image of a shin guard fairing for my soccer team. So I would play in a league, my regular league with this on, outdoor. This is not, I was playing indoor before. I would put my sock over it and they couldn't tell. The shape was similar enough that they couldn't tell either way that I had a fake leg. I didn't have a limp, and so I played in a soccer league without the other team knowing, without my teammates knowing, and without the referee knowing. So, because I wasn't sure if I was able to do this with metal and stuff. So it was really interesting. So, you know, the other team might treat me differently. I don't know if I want to, or they might swarm me like I'm the weak one, or my teammates may not want to pass me the ball because maybe I'm one of the weaker ones. So it was very interesting how that played out. And I went onto a soccer team very similar to Survivor. I didn't tell them at first. I wore sweatpants, and I played for 2 games. And they liked me. My friend Andy convinced me to do. I played in El Salvador with him. I didn't tell you, I taught 2 years overseas in El Salvador. He said, "Come, let's go out. You're fine. You can play." I was like, all right. So we go, and I did the same thing as in Survivor. It was after Survivor. But this time with the sweatpants, I was doing it as an actual practical thing, not like some social experiment on TV. I was doing it because I wanted to make the soccer team. I wanted to get on the team without them knowing. Because if I just showed up like this or with the post, they'd be like, no. You're not going to be able to play. We don't want you on the team. I mean, it would be hard for them to say that, but truly, that's what they'd be thinking. But I played with this thing, and after 2 games, the second game I scored a goal, and I was like, okay, I can show them now. You know, they can't say anything now. So I revealed it, and sure enough, they did treat me differently. They did. I'm not going to lie. I mean, they were tentative and whatever because they pretty much all reverted back. But it didn't matter. This thing was cool looking, and I'm proud to play with this thing on. And it protects other people from my titanium post so they don't injure themselves on it, right? Bone versus titanium, you know who's going to win, right? So here's Deborah. Again, this is an iconic photo. And with women, it's a whole other thing, too. So with me, as a man, I feel great to have my symmetry back. It's something that I didn't realize, like I said. But for men, I mean, we can wear scars and whatever, and it's, you know, no big deal. For women, there's a whole other self-esteem issue going on, and something that aesthetically, they have a very difficult time wearing dresses or skirts or things that show their legs as an amputee. So like Deborah got this, and she was stoked. She was so proud to wear this thing around because this thing was sleek, and it elicited conversations, and people would ask her about it, whereas before, same thing with me, people don't, if you just have the post with no fairing, they don't want to look. They look, and then you could see. There's a half a second where they go, oop, can't stare, don't want to look. But with this, then it's like, they know, okay, I'm obviously showing it, they'll ask, what is that? And then we have a conversation, and it brings down these barriers between the mainstream and those with disabilities. We start to talk about everything that just brings people together. So it's a pretty amazing phenomenon there as well. Here's Deborah again, another motorcycle shot. She's on her bike, kind of a sexy pose there with the metal and carbon fiber. This one was a Gucci bag, I think, that was matched perfectly to her fairing, so she could wear, you know, they can put whatever on there. It's just amazing. And it's the same, that really soft leather. This is a bodybuilder. So this guy is an Iraq vet. We worked a lot with the military that came back from Afghanistan and Iraq with injuries from war. He lost his leg in a tour in Iraq and in Baghdad, but he was a bodybuilder before going to war. He came back and he would compete as a bodybuilder with the post. And it was very strange because, you know, for bodybuilders, it's all about every single muscle group, every part of your body. I mean, it's a laser focus on each part of your body. So he wanted so badly to have this leg that filled in his body. And you can even see there's a little bit of a ridge there. It's almost like a vein that he kind of wanted. So he was back to competition with this 3D printed fairing that restored his body shape. So he was kind of a case in point in how perfect that was for him. This is a guy with a tattoo. Actually, that's me, but that's Photoshop tattoo. I don't really have that. But it's to show there was another candidate we had that had a tattoo, and he wanted the fairing to match his exact tattoo, so that was kind of cool. There's another one of San Francisco that's down the street from our old offices with sort of that you can see that shape. Another tattoo, non-existent, but looks real. That's the one I'm wearing right now, actually. Sarah Reinertsen, a very famous Paralympic athlete. We set her up. She was on the cover of Runner's World magazine. She's done the Ironman. She's just awesome, good friend of mine. She wanted a pattern like this. She found this, and he made it into 3D printed this sort of test sheet, and then formed it into a fairing for her. And we have carbon fiber and the same metallized carbon fiber. And it really is amazing. So she's an above-the-knee amputee, and you can see that mechanical knee. The things that she's been able to accomplish with this knee, it's just incredible. Like I say, Ironman, just unfathomable what she's done. But she has her shape back. It's restored that symmetry and her shape, and she feels better about going out sort of in a fancy dress like this in a nice setting, and it's just a conversation piece, just gorgeous. Now, what we were hoping to do is go back to Scott's original vision of being able to use computer-assisted design, CAD, and 3D printing to be able to print entire legs again. That's still into the future. But with folks like these war-torn individuals mainly from war-torn countries, formerly war-torn countries where mines are everywhere, and it's a big problem where legs are being sort of blown off by mines. They have no recourse. A lot of times there's not even any prosthetists. Those are the guys that make their legs there to treat them. So they have pretty rudimentary prostheses like these. Not exactly easy on the eyes. They're not aesthetically pleasing at all. So what we'd love to do, and now we have the capability of going in with just an iPad, a tablet with a camera, being able to take photos of the leg, of a post, take photos of it on an application called My Measures. We just, on the photo, we take the measures, put it right on there, all the measurements with the micrometer, put all the measurements on there on one photograph. I send that to the designers. Then we take 3D photographs all the way around in 2 different levels, what it is, and then we send those to our designers as well. They use software called 123D Catch. You may have heard of it. It creates computer-assisted design files out of just regular photographs. They can create a CAD file and create an entire leg from, 7,000 miles away or whatever. So when we get to the point where you can create entirely 3D printed legs, they get it, they create this in CAD on the computer, then we could print that up, theoretically, send it to the field, and someone in a war-torn country could get an entirely 3D printed leg in a matter of days that's exactly to their specifications. So this is what another version of that 3D printed leg would look like. Again, this is a proof of concept. This is the same guys you saw before. But someday, we'll have the technology to be able to print in metal, and they're starting to do it now, 3D printing in metal, starting it now to be able to print an entirely 3D printed leg and get it out to people that need it. So that is how 3D printing has served to help those with limb loss and restore body symmetry, and it certainly has helped me. And I'd like to conclude with a quote that has helped me for years, and something that could apply to whether you're starting a startup like Bespoke Innovations, or whether you're starting any sort of startup like I've seen some of the programs here, or whether it's somebody trying to overcome adversity like I've had to overcome, and many of my friends that you've seen here on these slides. And it goes like this. It's about circumstances. It's from George Bernard Shaw. People are always blaming their circumstances on who they are. I don't believe in circumstances. The people that get up in this world and get on in this world are the people that get up and look for the circumstances they want. And if they can't find them, they make them. Thank you guys very much for coming. Thank you. And unlike our previous speaker, I was very curious to ask some questions. I'm going to be here for questions. So absolutely feel free to tweet something in about Survivor if you want. I know a lot of people wonder about that, so feel free and fire away.
This is incredible. Am I on? I have to turn it on. Here's some questions. I want to start with.
All right. All right, so the first question is, could you please share what is the difference between your leg model and Oscar Pistorius? Ooh, I don't want to be compared with him. But, and that's interesting because Oscar Pistorius was this, idol for a lot of amputees and someone he looked up to and this inspiration for so many. And then for him to fall from grace like that, it's just a horrible shame. For anyone to have allegedly done the things that he did is horrible. But on top of that, for someone to be in that position, and then, I feel like sometimes when I'm running, I do have a leg like his. It's a sprint foot, it's called. It's one of those ones, just like you see the blade. It looks like a leaf spring. Amazing. So that's what I do all my long distance running and triathlon in. But I know when I'm running, some people will be like, oh, it's like that murderer, it's great. He hasn't been proven guilty, but come on, we're all following it, right? So it's basically the same idea to answer the question, how is it the same or different? It's based on the same patent, and that's all it is. It's a carbon fiber spring. It's just a very amazingly simple idea, and it's not as easy to balance on as this thing. I mean, I'm not able to go and play soccer with it. I basically can run in a straight line. It's not that bad though. I can manipulate it pretty well, but it's not great for everything. It's just for running. And I did a marathon, 2009. I'd never done a marathon before. Not that interesting either. I liked shorter distance, but I was able to do it, so it was pretty cool.
I got a number of questions. How much does that actually cost?
Yeah, I get that question. So the leg setup is covered in insurance, but not all feet are. So I actually, when I lost my foot, before I went into Survivor, before any of that stuff, I couldn't afford the highest level of foot. So my health insurance paid for a pretty good one, but the one that I wanted was like over $3,000 just for the foot, not the other. So I borrowed money from my grandma to buy this foot. I think I was like 30 years old, teacher, whatever, live in California, high cost living. So I borrowed money. So that's $3,000 for the foot. Then the rest of the setup is several $1,000s, which insurance pays for. But unfortunately, with these fairings, they are not covered in insurance. And that's one thing that's been a very difficult challenge for Bespoke Innovations, which is now 3D Systems. I don't even mention Bespoke Innovations anymore. The fairings as a division has a hard time because each one of these fairings is from $4,000 to $6,000 because of the design time that is put into them. We're working to bring down that design time so that there's a universal attachment interface. Right now, the post, the way that each one attaches is all individually. Hours go into the computer-assisted design, how that can attach on. So the fairing itself is very expensive for that reason, but we're bringing the price down so that pretty much anyone could afford it after a while.
All right. If you had a chance to participate in Survivor, would you do it again? If so, would you win it?
Yes, I would win. Yes to both questions. I would go on again for sure, and I've been asked that many times. And they just sent out something. Season 30 is coming up in a couple of seasons, and so they asked everybody from previous seasons to update all their information, tell us about it, whether or not we would bring our significant other, because they're doing these family ones. And so I volunteered my wife. I said, yeah, she'd go. And then I told her that I told them that, and she's like, what? I'm not going on. I said, you would if it came down to it. We would have to, so yeah. And we'd win, yeah, of course.
Obviously, right?
Yeah, of course.
Last question. What motivates you in situations like these?
Say that again?
What motivates you? What pushes you forward?
What
Yeah.
Well, okay, so the very beginning, what motivated me just to get better was, there were several things. One of them was just life. If I had lost my foot to an accident or to anything other than something that was life-threatening,
Sure.
it would have been different. But this was life-threatening, and my daughter was 1 year old. We were planning on having more kids. It was just this, I already had this vision of how my life was going to go. And so I really just focused on that and didn't really have any doubts about myself. And once I was able to get back into sports through that triathlon, it just kind of perpetuated, and this optimistic feeling just kept going. And then it carried over into Survivor, and I think that helped. Once I was on that show and was able to kind of compete with the others, that sort of perpetuated and bolstered it as well. So I'm always motivated to do bigger and better things. Year and a half ago, I climbed Mount Kilimanjaro, raising money for the Challenge Athletes Foundation. Challenge Athletes Foundation helps raise money for disabled, mostly kids, but to get prosthetic devices for sports, for disabled folks all over the world. And so I raised $10,000 individually. Our team, our expedition for Kilimanjaro raised $140,000, wow. And I climbed to 19,300 feet as part of this expedition, and just continued to kind of, work in the shadow of all those that inspired me, really, and passing that inspiration on. So I was privileged.
You have an incredible story. I think everyone agrees. A round of applause to Chad.
Thank you.
There's a number of questions waiting for you on Twitter. You can answer them directly. It's been a great pleasure and honor having you.
Likewise. Thank you so much for having me, everybody. Thank you.